Good afternoon. It is time for Padre's Ponderings again, and we still have our wipes.
Still got the wipes. Oh, geez,
Still
one of
got
these
the
days. One of
wipes.
these days. No, not today.
No, not today and not this week, for sure.
Right. So, what are you excited about today?
Oh, we kind of surprised everybody on Sunday that we live streamed 10:30 from Cross Point. We didn't make an announcement ahead of time because we wanted to make sure that we could do it, but it was fantastic. Did you watch it?
No, I didn't. I was
Well,
there.
you need to go back. You were
was
there,
there,
but you can
yeah.
watch the replay.
Oh, I
on
see.
Facebook.
I thought that was just an experimental thing and it wasn't being done for true yet.
Well, we decided, let's try it. So we did.
All right. Well,
And
good.
it was great. Yes.
I tell you, we're going to be more and more and more into all the streaming, into all the web page, the internet activities. That's just where the future is, I believe. Not that the in-person is going to disappear. It's just you're going to see an explosion in all the internet activity through the parish. That's just coming. And I think that's a good thing. A good thing.
It is, because we know that a lot of people are not ready to come back, and that is A-okay. One thing that I really enjoyed, so this is exciting too, on Fridays, we have a virtual women's summer Bible study. We meet through Zoom, and Zoom has this feature now where you can take a large group and you break into small groups within that meeting. And that's been really fun. So you've got a group we had 33 people on Friday, and I push a button and it splits them up into small groups, and then give them a countdown when it's time to come back together and wrap up. And that's been really helpful. We even have Roberta Adams' daughters joining us from Charlotte. That wouldn't happen if we weren't
great.
using the technology. So
And it just
fun.
splits them up randomly?
You can assign groups, or Zoom will just split them up into groups of 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So that's been fun. So Cross
And then you have
Point,
your small group discussion in
a
Zoom
really small group.
Wow.
Yeah, and pray for each other and get to know different people, because when you're working with 3 different campuses and so many different services, you might never see someone who attends the chapel, you may never see someone who attends 8 o'clock at the historic campus. So that's been really good. So that was exciting to have Cross Point live streaming. Music sounded great. Sermon was.
What can you say? There you go.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was the first time you had preached at Cross Point
This year.
all year
This year.
because of COVID and surgery and recovery and all that. So it was good to have you back in the house.
Good to be there.
So all that was fantastic. Let's see. Second service here. No, this was the first service at the chapel.
First service
Second
at the
service
chapel.
at Cross Point. That was great. Sally, we will address the sound. The interesting part about this building is, how many services do we have before the shutdown?
We had the dedication service and either 1 or 2.
I think it was 2.
Might
One full, and then one was that March.
Virus was all around, yeah.
Right, when not as many people came because of that. We had 2. Jason's saying we had 2. We had 2. But here was the thing. We're trying to work out the sound in this building. So when we were live streaming during the shutdown, it sounded fantastic because it was just straight from your microphone into the system and out to the public. When you have people inside, it's the in-house speakers. Those were adjusted the week of the shutdown, and then we didn't get to test them again with actual people sitting in the pews. And it's very different, empty testing a system versus having people inside. So we know that is an issue and was hard for some people, and we're working with that right now.
And those folks will come in and do that.
Yes, we are working on that presently. So thank you for that question, Sally. This is exciting.
You loaded up with excitement.
I know, we got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on. The historic campus seats were filled in about 25 minutes this morning.
First service over there is going to be this weekend, this Sunday, 10 o'clock. First one, 25 minutes, boom. But we still have spots in the chapel. We still have spots at Cross Point. And then hopefully the next week, if everything goes okay with the 10 o'clock service, we'll add the 8 o'clock service. And please remember that the 8 o'clock service on the historic campus will be a mask-only service, whereas the other services in all 3 locations, the mask is optional. But at the 8 o'clock service on the historic campus, week after this,
The 5th?
will be,
that
that's
right?
July 5th, will be a mask-only service. So,
And one thing about if you came to Cross Point or you came to the chapel, we had assigned seats because both of those venues, this center aisle in the chapel is more than 6 feet.
you're 6 feet even.
It's right at 6 feet. Cross Point's great because we can maneuver that any way we want to with the chairs, so that was fine. But assigned seating is the way we did it. The historic campus is going to be a little bit different because the center aisle is not 6 feet. So when you come on Sunday, you're going to be seated as you arrive in a certain order. So please be patient with that. Cheryl already has the list. She's already working it out in her head how that's going to go and working with the ushers. So yesterday, I think you said in the video, the doors will open 15 minutes before. I think she's going to shift that to 30 just to have enough time.
Yeah.
So,
It's,
but
it's
again, be
just, it's
patient.
just tricky doing. It just really is. You've got to have 3 feet between family groupings. I mean, 6 feet between family groupings, and that's on those pews. If you looked at that fantastic video that went out yesterday that I made,
was very well done, thank you.
it's got little marks in there. So between every one of those marks is 2 feet. So you've got to have, between family units, you've got to have 3 of those little little yellow markers over there between family units. And so that really, if it's non-family units, you can just get 2 individuals or a couple on a pew, and that's it.
Right.
So it's pretty tricky. You do thank you for signing up early. Now come early so we can get you in there seated well. And remember now, those of you who are coming early, remember,
6 feet.
go to the bathroom before you come, because the bathrooms will be open in the parish hall, but they're for emergency use only. Just like the water fountains are closed down, and there's no nursery, no Sunday school program. We're coming to worship 45 minutes, and the service over there and the service at the chapel will be exactly the same. So whichever one you go to, you're going to get the same service. The message will be different because there'll be a different priest over there than will be over here. But the service, liturgy, everything will be exactly the same for you. Communion at both places.
And the service was right at 40 minutes, 45 minutes with...
Last person was out at 44 minutes from the chapel here. So we started communion at 31 minutes, I think, something like that.
Very good. Something else happened that was a positive. There are a lot of negatives in the world, but there are a lot of positives. So
Oh, yeah.
we're highlighting the positives. Friday, Judge Dixon made a final decision on the court case, and so that was positive towards the Anglican Church. Do you want to say anything about that?
You know, I really haven't done a whole lot in dwelling on that. Many of the clergy in the diocese, they can't talk about anything else, but this court case has been going on now since 2012. And it's a fight over property. That's really what it is. And it just keeps going, and a judge rules, and then that gets appealed, and then it gets appealed, and then it gets sent back, and this was a great ruling. It just says that the property belongs to the people who have the deeds. And we have the deeds to our property, and the other clergy, and not clergy, but the other parishes have as well. But just because a judge makes a very definitive ruling does not mean that it cannot be appealed. And it's fully expected by the lawyers for the diocese that the National Church will appeal this ruling, and it'll make its way back to the Supreme Court again. And, you know, we could be, hopefully, sometime in 2021, have the thing finally settled one way or the other. But between now and then, this is not something to wring your hands over. You know, it's about property. It's not about people. And what the mission of the church is all about is about people. And we're about reaching folks with the good news of God in Christ. But Jesus was not a person who was concerned with property. And we shouldn't let that be, even though in our humanity, we really emphasize those things that we can touch, and we can gather, and we can hold, and we can store, and all those kinds of things. That's not the essence of what Christianity is about. It's about people, not property. And you've heard me say so often, if you miss the people, you miss the point. The property stuff will take care of itself, one way or the other. And when it does, we'll move on to whatever the new tomorrow is. But do not trouble yourselves over that. Not at all.
So if you miss the people, you miss the point. That's the focus.
That's it. Oh,
That's
yeah.
what we're called to do. So that, a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff coming up.
Very positive.
Yes. All right, your sermon on Sunday was about the prodigal son. So I just thought we'd look at it a little bit more today. So Luke 15,
Yeah.
who was Jesus talking to?
You know, that's often a good question to ask. He's talking to disciples, but when Jesus and all the other people, Jesus, once his ministry starts, he's always surrounded by people. We get the idea sometimes that he's walking along and he's got these 12 fellows by him and they're kind of in isolation. But once Jesus begins to be known throughout the Galilee and down toward Jerusalem, there's never a time that he's apart from people. They're always there. And that was the habit of the day. When rabbis became known, wherever they went, they walked and they talked. And they taught as they walked. That's what their talking was all about. So people gathered around them to hear what they were saying. These were godly people, godly men. And so when Jesus is walking, his disciples are there, but there's this greater crowd of people that are around him too. And Jesus is talking about property. In one thing, he's talking about prizes, about undiscovered riches, about things that serendipity come up. The pearl of great price is right before that, and the treasure buried in the field is right before that. That there are some things that you have to get rid of everything for. There's things of ultimate value, ultimate worth. And if you read the rest of that chapter leading up to that, you see the pearl and the treasure, the buried treasure. And then Jesus gets to the thing of ultimate worth, and that's people. About the son who's lost. And of course, it's a parable. So it's a story that has a deeper meaning, and the deeper meaning, of course, is that we are the prodigal son, and we're the prodigal daughters, and the father there on the farm is our Father in heaven, and there's room in our house for him. So, does that answer that question?
Well,
Yes. Question 2.
but I think it's important, like when you hear a sermon, and you hear these, because you've only got 20 minutes.
And we're working on holding the sermons down to 15 to
Right.
18
So
minutes
you've got
because we want the
15
service
minutes.
over in 45. So.
Right, so you got 15 minutes, but, so I, oftentimes, when I hear someone preach, we're supposed to then go to the Word and read it ourselves and go through. And so this morning I was just kind of looking through and looking at what was before this parable, who he's talking to, what's going on and what's happening.
And that's how, when the parable starts out, notice what it says. It says, Jesus continued.
Right.
See? It's
Right.
part of a longer narrative.
Yes, and he's, and right before the cost of being a disciple is something that he's telling them about, to being salt. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. And then he starts going into the parables, and it says, now the tax collectors and sinners were gathering to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers were muttering amongst themselves, this man welcomes sinners to eat with them. So this is so key. What he's hearing, what they're talking about, and he knows what they're talking about, and then he gives the parable of the lost coin. Very short, but very profound. And then he continued. So he goes from the parable of the lost coin and goes straight into the parable of the lost son. And the parable of the lost sheep was before that also. And then it's just parable after parable. Do you think the Pharisees got it?
Well, no. Well, there's in a parable, when he says those who have ears to hear, let them hear. it's that way with any conversation. You hear what you want to hear. And I've been in conversation with people before, and you start talking, and they've already turned the ears off, and they're thinking about what they're going to say. That's a part of their agenda instead of what you want them to hear. And did they hear it? If there's a sense biologically, they couldn't help but hear it. It went in here, but did it go here? And it didn't go here, obviously, because they crucify him. But the idea is that we're all sinners, and the Pharisees felt like they were not sinners. They were above everybody else. They looked down at everybody else. And there are those who would say the Pharisees were the older son, that idea. But I'd rather look at the older son and the younger son as being me and you, because we're both older or younger sons and daughters at one time or another.
Right.
And the easy way in looking at a parable is to think it's talking about somebody else.
Right.
But the truth is, it's always talking about you. You are a character in there, always, always. And oftentimes I find I'm multiple characters in there, depending upon the season of life that I'm in, or the day, or the hour that I'm in.
Yeah, how many times are we listening to a sermon or we're listening to someone talk and you're thinking in your head, I wish so-and-so could hear this.
There you go.
But
there you go.
There's something in there for us too. But you did talk about teenagers and the world revolving around, how, what is it? Your brain is not fully developed until you're 25. And then you realize your parents actually
They're a little
had
smarter than you
some
thought they were.
wisdom.
Yeah, a little smarter than you thought they were.
So, this coming weekend, we've got Pastor Vaughn's going to be preaching at Cross Point and the chapel. I believe he is preaching Esther. And then Pastor Jonathan's going to be preaching at the historic campus.
Right.
And then we'll switch around. So how was it preaching two locations separated by the parking lot this week? Hadn't done that in a while.
I haven't ever done it. And the thing about it, I was glad there was about 45 minutes between the two, so that you have an opportunity to shift gears. You shed the vestments and you get over there and you walk around. The spaces are so different. And I needed time to be there to look around so that my eyes would get accustomed to it. If you walk into a strange place to preach and there's so many different things around there, it's hard to keep your train of thought. So I always get into there and make sure my eyes are accustomed to everything that's around, the people, the setup, all the rest of that. And then you just have to shift gears. It's a different setting in an entirely different way. The music, of course, is very different as well. And so when I'm over there, I tend to be a little less formal, I guess. There are different methods to convey the same message. And the methodology in a formal liturgical setting is different than it is in an informal setting. So I'm more personable over there.
You are. You even had on a much more casual clergy. You had stripes.
Right,
Yeah.
blue and white stripes.
Stripes are for Cross Point.
Looking good, may I say. But that's another story.
Yes.
So what's the idea of what do you plan to do with the sermon thing? Did you just had one question you wanted to get answered there, or what?
Well, just thinking about, just conversation about the parable and just digging in a little bit more, personal study, which is what we're supposed to do.
How might we aid someone's personal follow-up study from a sermon, whether I preach it or Juan or Jonathan? How might we do that?
How might we do that? I was thinking.
Were you thinking?
I was thinking in the bathroom, which is always
A little too much information here.
As I'm getting ready, that's when, because it's kind of just, nobody else is in there. You're kind of focused on getting ready, but my mind starts to wander. I told Jonathan that the other day, that at 1 o'clock in the morning, things pop in my head. And then when I'm getting ready in the morning, the rest of the day is kind of busy, accomplishing a lot of other things. But I was thinking, it would be nice to take your PowerPoints and the scriptures that you use for your sermons and all of you use for the sermons, and then create a follow-up for people to be able to download and then use the rest of the week for their personal stuff.
I mean, just download it, just
They would
load the
download.
PowerPoint for them, and then they can take that.
No, I would pull that out and put it into a one-page sermon notes kind of thing, where they can kind of think on their own, expound on what was shared in the 15 to 20 minutes on Sunday.
I think it'd be a good idea. And we have a lot of really astute Bible students who could take something like that and really go with it. And I would hope would invite or share it with people in their neighborhood who don't go to church anywhere. That would be a helpful thing as well, because Jesus was talking to people who in the main did not go to formal worship service. When he's talking about the sinners and the tax collectors and all, those folks are not allowed in the temple. They were ostracized. So he's out there talking to folks who are common laborers, the shepherds, the folks who are dirty, and the bottom rung of society is who he's talking to. In a system that was very class oriented. He's talking to the bottom rung of folks. The folks who are needing to have hope. And they need to have a way out. They need to have something to look forward to. And they need to realize that they are somebody. Maybe not in the world's eyes, but in God's eyes. And as Jesus says, those who think they're first are going to be surprised because they end up last. And those who think they're last and least are going to be amazed at God's great love for them. And they're going to be prized above all.
I think everybody needs that message of hope.
Mm-hmm. Sure they do.
There's so much going on right now, and really there's nothing new under the sun. There's always been so much going on, and spiritual battle, and we just happen to have social media and the 24-hour news, which amplifies everything. But we all need to be sharing that message of hope, and especially, I was talking to a couple of people about just the impact of us being so isolated, just with our mental health, how that can be so hard. And we're trying our best to stay isolated for health reasons, but mental health, we need to still be reaching out to people and calling people and finding other ways to connect. So I think that's why call your neighbors. Even if you don't want to be together with them physically right now, but call them and reach out to them. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who, precious woman that goes to Cross Point, and she's recovering from surgery and doing great, but isn't able to come to service, and she's missed this past Sunday. And just how important it was that first week, just to come back, even if you're 6 feet apart. Just to come back and be in the same place together. But I encourage you to call people, check up on them.
That's right. Everybody needs to know that they're part of something bigger than themselves. And you come back to a worship service, and you've been out there by yourself. You've been watching on the internet and all that, and that's been wonderful and sweet and everything. But you come back into a larger group setting, and you realize that I'm part of something much bigger than me. And the world doesn't revolve around me. I'm in this together. I'm not by myself. There are folks that are standing to my shoulder and to my back. There are folks that are here to help me up if I fall. And it's a great reminder, a physical reminder that you are not alone. You're not alone. And we're not meant to be alone. This whole idea of self-isolating that's not in the book of Genesis at all. Mm-hmm. We're not supposed to be alone. We're built to be in community. Sometimes our choice of communities is not very good. But God has a community in mind for us that's fantastic. And we need to be reminded of that. And that's what worship does for us, among many things.
Yeah. We have, I would just encourage you to, when you get the weekly emails, and if you don't receive the weekly emails, we send one out every Thursday at 3 o'clock. And now on Mondays, we're sending out a video with some links on it for whatever service is opening up. Again, and you've been doing videos for that, but typically Thursdays at 3 o'clock, our emails come out with information about events that are coming up, a little writing from one of the pastors. Father Tom's doing one this week on pastoral care. But when you're receiving that, often we're adding also people that have passed away. And this is an extremely difficult time, especially for those who have lost loved ones. And that's a tough time anytime, but now with that added isolation and not being able to have services and things like that. So when you see somebody's name there that a family member has passed away in the congregation, I would encourage you, please reach out to those people that are really needing to know they're not alone right now. That's hard. And if you have an upcoming surgery or anything going on and you need pastoral care, reach out. We're still here.
Contact the church, contact Tom Henderson straight out, or contact the church office, we'll get word to you. And be reminded too that, next Wednesday?
Wednesday, July 1st, here.
Mm-hmm. And that'll be an in-person healing service. Tom does those, and it'll also be on the internet, the live streaming. And there are folks that are, I don't know exactly how they communicate on Facebook, I guess, what they're doing. They're doing prayer requests back and forth, and so there's a virtual healing going on as well as an in-person healing going on. So that's not this Wednesday, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, July 1st.
What is this Wednesday?
This Wednesday is Lisa Cerisi's third and final over-the-top, out-of-this-world presentation on ancient art. I don't know if my heart can stand a third one. I'm going to try it one more time. 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, and watch Lisa. And you know what I want you to see is not just the art. I want you to see the heart of the person who's talking about the art. That's what's special. Special to me, for sure. So y'all tune in. Lisa's a wonderful young lady and a great, great teacher, and she is smart as a whip. Smart as a whip. I've been tutoring her for a number of years now. She's really come around.
She's coming around?
Coming around.
But I think it's not just her passion about the art, it's her passion about the Lord.
Amen. That's what I say,
and
see the heart.
And that's what's in the art. And so, yeah.
See what's in the heart.
It's fun to watch her get excited.
Yep. Praise God for that.
So, all right, let's see. Sue Short is online with us, and Sally, Winifred, Charles said that you've done a fantastic job of handling the pandemic. Thank you, Charles.
This whole thing is brand new. It really is, and we each pastor has got to navigate it, and rector or senior pastor, whatever you want to call it. Each one of us has to navigate the thing in a way that we feel like the Lord's leading us to do. That is beneficial for the congregation, and as the church is larger and larger and larger, your congregation is made up of multiple generations. It gets harder and harder and harder to do that. But I'm blessed to have a great team of folks to work with me. Great team of clergy, great team of lay people. You're on that team. I'm blessed to have you too.
Uh-oh, you lost it. That's okay.
We'll get it later.
We'll get it.
I can't get up and pick it up because your mom will think that I'm show the back of my hair or something will be wrong, and so I'll leave it to you. Anyway, something else exciting too. Our youngest grandchild is at home with us right now. He's here visiting from up in Clemson, Charlie, and Charles Edward Owens the fifth. Praise God. And he's such a special, young and talented young fellow he is, and we're so glad to have him, as with all of our grandchildren. We just don't get to see him all that much, except yours are right next door to us. But Charlie and Britton and Riley are in the upstate. We don't get to see them that much, but we got Charlie here for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. But we're glad to have him here, and he's glad to be with us because he loves Nanny's cooking, and Nanny's makes whatever he wants.
I know, so you've been eating really well the past week.
Yeah, I can see short rations coming when Charlie leaves.
But the Father's Day, we'll just share a little glimpse of, we don't do a lot of gifts as a family, but food is my mom's love language. So for Father's Day dinner, we had beef tenderloin, brown rice,
Squash
casserole. That was delicious.
Sliced heirloom tomatoes.
Heirloom tomatoes.
Delightful.
Those were really good.
And then we had a peach cobbler.
Peach cobbler.
Who made the peach cobbler?
I made the peach cobbler. No, it's not
No, it wasn't
Sam's.
Sam's.
I made it from the church cookbook, by the way. Great peach cobbler in there.
There you go.
But that was fun. And one of your grandchildren is actually watching live on Facebook right now. That's Britton.
Oh, Britain.
So, Britton,
Talk
thanks
about a
for
talented
joining
young
us.
lady. She's one. She has a great heart for the Lord, and she has a real passion for cameras and photography and behind the scenes kinds of things. She volunteers in her church doing the cameras for the live streaming that they do up there, and goes to Lander and grew up in the church and has just been so strong in church camps and all those activities. I'm just so proud of the fine Christian young lady that Britton is, and can't wait to see how God's going to use her as an adult. Oh, she's
20.
there now, isn't she? She's 20.
She's 20 this coming week. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. All
Talented
right.
lady.
Well, we're going to wrap up because you have to go and finish your mini duties. We both do. But lots to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Really.
You were not preaching. You're preaching again on July 5th, correct, at the historic campus?
On the historic campus. No,
Is that not right? Yes.
yes, July 5th on the historic campus. Yeah. Right.
Or do you
I'm a lot of services out there.
I know there's a lot of stuff going on. Do you have an idea of what direction you're headed in yet?
9th chapter
Oh.
of the book of Genesis. I'll tell you what it's about. It's about Noah. You open right to
I
it?
open right to it. No joke.
About Noah. About Noah.
That's what my Bible study's working on this week.
Yep, I'm going to preach about Noah, and the title of the sermon is Purpose, Promise, Possibilities. And Noah was given a purpose, he was given God's promise, and he had a whole lot of possibilities, and he dropped the ball. So I'm going to be speaking about Noah and then how we have a great purpose and God's great promises, and we have possibilities, and the question is, are we going to drop the ball or not, individually and as a congregation? So it'll be a great sermon.
Very good. Looking forward to it.
Just starting it, but we'll work on it.
Okay.
Got time.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining us today. Have a blessed week. We'll see you again next Tuesday for Padre's Ponderings with our Clorox wipes, but we'll see you. Where are you
won't
going to be?
use that one again.
Where are you going to be? No, we'll throw that one away. Where are you going to be this week? You're not preaching, but you're
I will be we're opening the historic campus, and I'm at wherever we're opening, that's where I'm going to be. Jonathan's preaching, but I'll be there as the celebrant, and I want to be there to see people, and I want to be there to make sure everything's going smoothly. Because if we hit snags, then we won't open the next one. We'll get all the snags worked out before we go on. So I'll be on the historic campus 10 o'clock, and looking forward to being over there and to see the folks who are there and to praise the Lord with you.
So that he'll see you Sunday. I'll see you Sunday if you come to the chapel at Cross Point.
Okay.
Excited about that. Have a blessed week, and
And all that we do here, know that God loves you, and I love you as well.
go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Good job. You're getting this down,
I'm
aren't
getting
you?
it down.
All right. All right.
Don't get your